What's up everybody, Brett here, bringing you back into some more Total War Warhammer 2 with another free-for-all. And today I'm going to be playing as Brettonia. This was an amazing free-for-all game. Once again playing with a friend, and I think some of his friends as well. So it was a very friendly game. People trying different builds, and you certainly get to see a lot of variation in these free-for-alls that you don't get to see if we were just doing quick battles, let's say, on ladder. People would be taking very meta armies, and you wouldn't get a chance to see these types of fun units getting used. So once again, I'm going to go into slow-mo. Now, one of my viewers did leave a comment to me suggesting how I could more easily read some of these unit cards, and it's very buggy. And it's something that I kind of suspected, but he clarified it for me. So let's say I wanted to read something very specific for you off of a unit card, and you'll notice if you've been watching the videos, I've been struggling to get this to work. You need to zoom in really all the way to kind of the center of the unit, make sure there's no obstruction, click on them, and then it allows you to do that. So it's not very intuitive in my opinion. You should just be able to kind of zoom out, click on a unit, and go down to their card, but that's not the case. So to break down my army, I have a front line of battle pilgrims and men-at-arms, standard no shield variant sword infantry. I have a secondary back line with foot squires, good armor piercing. I figured I would need it versus all three of these factions, dwarves, high elves, and vampire counts. I have 4 units of spearmen at arms, very low tier, no shields as well, very cheap, just as backline protection for my 3 archers, 2 of which are the fire arrow variant, and one of them being the pox arrows for the poison effect. Now, I mentioned I had 2 foot squires in the background. I also have the Regiment of Renown, the Holy Wardens of La Maison Tall, and a little French accent for you there. These guys do have flaming and magical attacks. You'll see here they look amazing with their dual-wielded weapons there. So they're just the Regiment of Renown Battle Pilgrim variant, and they also have Frenzy, Immunopsychology. Their stats are excellent. They're borderline unbreakable, which is why I love them. They're going to be great versus vampire counts with the flaming magic damage, and somewhat weak to the dwarves, but I like them as a kind of a mirroring unit. You just send them wherever you need them, wherever they'll be effective. Don't send them up against units that are resistant to magical damage. Let's see, what else do I have here? I have 2 units of Grail Knights, good anti-large. I figured the High Elf player and the Vampire player, Vampire Counts player, might bring some sort of cavalry, Blood Knights, the Fireborn, something like that, and I would need Grail Knights to counter them. They do have perfect vigor. They don't get tired, and we can zoom in far, and let's see if we can click on that and get it to work. Yeah, there we go. So perfect vigor, 20% physical resistance, as well as that comes from the physical resistance does come from the Blessing of the Lady. So as long as they're not broken, they will have that physical resistance, and Immunopsychology certainly helps them to not get broken. And I also took the Defenders of the Fleur de Lis. So I love this unit. It's a 700 gold, I believe, version of the Knights Errant. They do have Frenzy and Immunopsychology, and if you keep them safe, don't just throw them into a frontline engagement. They can do a lot of work for you. That Frenzy mechanic, let's see, let me get here close. Okay, 12% weapon damage, some charge bonus and melee attack, and Immunopsychology as well. So you want them to get into the back line of something slightly lightly armored, and they're going to do a lot of damage for you. They are anti-infantry. Took 1 paladin, stripped down completely. He's going to be on foot, kind of roughing it with the peasantry there. And he's just going to be a nice encouragement anchor for my squishy front line of men-at-arms mixed with battle pilgrims. And for my lore choice, the Fey Enchantress on Silveron, or Unicorn Mount, giving her, let's see, 20% physical resistance, 60% magic resistance there, so that's huge. You can't just Spirit Leech her to death. 15% missile resistance, which is standard. She causes fear on Silveron as well. Let's see, she also has Life Bloom, the Mists of the Lady, -5 melee attack to units in that aura, as well as a draining effect as long as she is engaged in combat. So you'll see over the course of this battle, I'm going to throw her into combat in situations that aren't really that favorable for her, but it's really just to get the draining effect and reduce the melee attack of the units around her. Took 2 very cheap spells, Awakening of the Wood, an explosion, which lowers speed as well. as well as Earthblood, and that's just to trigger Life Bloom, the map-wide healing on my units. So spamming those out with as many arcane conduits as I can to increase my reserves, as well as the the Chalice of Potions. So this is going to allow me to call down Comets of Casadora. We do get 2 casts of this, and I think I'm going to get 2 very good casts off with this game. So you'll see here I'm leaving my position. The Dwarf player, whose units I'm going to go over briefly, had an artillery piece, which I did not. And looking over his army, I didn't bring enough cav to really want to contest the dwarf player in this strong kind of geometry he had going at the beginning. Had I went with questing knights and foot squires and things like that, lots of armor piercing, very mobile armor piercing, I wouldn't have been scared of a single grudge thrower or these 2 gyrocopters. I did bring archers to counter anything like this, but these are the brimstone variant. They do have increased accuracy and anti-large, and they can drop bombs. For those of you who aren't familiar, they can do bombing runs and crush your infantry in that way. Single unit of Slayers here to protect the back line, no doubt. I want to say he has several units of miners, maybe 2. No, just the 1 miner, but he does have a extremely sturdy front line of Iron Breakers, in addition to one of them being the Norgerling's Iron Breakers, one of my favorite units in the game. They might be the best infantry unit in the game. They throw satchel charges. I know people have tested it to see which infantry unit will fight to the death between all the high tier infantries, and I think the Norgerling Ironbreakers with their armor piercing satchel charges do eke that out. They have 86 melee defense, 125 armor with shields, and their leadership is so high that they might as well be unbreakable. Immunopsychology, they have the innate dwarven magic resistance, so things like Fate Abuna trying to just burst them down with magic doesn't really go well against them. And when they're anchored by a Rune Lord with all of these different runes, they're going to have increased armor piercing, physical resistance. They're going to have even higher armor. They're going to get up to like 185 armor. So past a certain point you do get diminishing returns, but yeah, when they're fighting around a Rune Lord, you're not going to be able to take these guys out. A couple Rangers here, which were invisible to me at this point. They do have Stalk, and they are shielded for those of you who aren't aware. And 2 units of Iron Drakes, so I was happy to see these guys on the field. I brought a lot of low-tier infantry, so when I looked at this army, I was just like, nope, we're going to go to the other side of the field, and we're going to look to engage with the Vampire Counts if possible. The High Elf player, kind of an early adopter of my channel here, Titus, has been helping me get together with these games, so I want to thank him for that. He's the High Elf player, and he's taking the center with this very elite High Elf army, and he's taking the high ground, and we'll see how that works out for him. He did take Teclis, so he's coming over here with Teclis and his Flock of Dooms. I don't think he took Chain Lightning. No, he did not take Chain Lightning on Teclis, which is great in the free-for-alls because you'll get lots of blobbed units. But he did take Flock of Doom, and let's get real close so we can click on him here. Let's see if it'll let me do it. Are we close enough? We're not. Let's see if I pause it, if that makes it easier. Something about this slope I feel like is interfering with my ability to click, and it certainly is. So that's very buggy. I wish that was something they would change. So Fiery Convocation, it's a Phoenix that goes down a straight line and burns low tier infantry. It works really well against them. But Flock of Doom, that's buggy. It's a AoE damage ability. It doesn't do very good against the dwarves with their magic resistance and their heavy armor, but if you overcast it, it does have increased range and duration, so it'll do more damage in that way. And I think when it's overcast as well, it also has increased armor piercing values, so that's worth noting. He also has the Fireborn here, an extremely powerful cav unit. Let's go back to slow-mo. High physical resistance, 70% damage resistance against fire. So these Iron Drakes, which aren't really meant to fight cavalry, are still going to have almost no effect against them as well as they have Martial Mastery, which is a greater version of the Martial Prowess High Elf racial trait. It's going to give them huge melee defense bonuses of 12 and melee attack bonus of 8. So that's good to know there. So you see here a Flock of Doom going off quite early. And you're not missing much on my side. I don't want you to think I'm just repositioning. I want to take the fight around here, and I'm repositioning slowly. I have my units locked in groups. I'm moving my first line, second line, and then archer line kind of in order like that while using my spears to screen in the back. At this point, I don't know if anyone has, vanguarded Bugsman Rangers or anything crazy behind me, and I don't want to over chase with my Grail Knights, but I am going to use them to force the undead Vampire Counts player here to scoot, because looking at his army, and this is going to be very simple to go over, he only brought Graveguard, Sword and Shield variant, and 2 ranked up all the way to rank 9 Graveguards with great weapons. I kind of like that. I personally am not a fan of sinking chevrons. I think the gold is more valuable in different units. But if you're expecting to go up against high armored sword masters or just lots of dwarves, if he was placed next to the dwarves, these units would do great against the heavy armor of the dwarves. The Lord here is Manfred von Karstein on foot. He took a lot of his abilities, Wind of Death being notable among them, as well as Spirit Leech, Fate of Buna. And he does have his ability. Let's see if we can get it. Come on, Manfred. Let's click. Let's pause it, see if we can get it. I want to master this for you guys, so I'm not just relying on my memory. Anyway, it's Master of the Dark Arts, I believe what it's called, but it gives him regen. It's almost like a secondary arcane conduit for him. He also brought the Vampire with the Lore of Death. Vampiress, I should say. Always like those models. I think they look really good. By the way, it's what my daughter's going to be for Halloween, just not a quite so revealing version of that. Let's see, we have the Claw of Nagash, Mortis Engine, Regiment of Renown, and I do have that in full speed. Let's lower that a bit. So the Claw of Nagash, Regiment of Renown, has a slowing aura. It heals in an AoE, damages in an AoE, and provides increased magic for Manfred von Karstein. A few spearmen here and there, skeletal spearmen, to round out the army's anti-large. So up on this position, the High Elf player, and it's worth going over their army as well, because they're very elite. A front line of the Sword Masters of Hoeth. They do have missile resistance, so it looks like they're just great sword units, but kind of the lore behind that is they're so awesome with these swords that they can literally cut arrows out of the sky, so they are shielded despite not having shields. The Phoenix Guard, probably the best halberd unit in the game, right up there with the Black Guard of Nagaron. Going to be great against all my calves, so I need to be very careful when engaging the High Elves head on. I'd much rather take this fight here with the undead, and that's what I'm going to be looking to do. My army is very good against theirs, I feel. They took the Scions of Mathlon, the Spearman Regiment of Renown, who provide let's see if I can click on it. There we go. The Aura of Protection. So they give plus 12 magic, plus 12 damage resistance in this aura around them, as long as your mana, your magic, is above 50%, which at the beginning of the game it just always is. So that's good for them, as well as the Pure Main Company. I love the White Lions thematically. I love Alistair, for those of you who play the campaign. He's kind of a unique Lord option. I think it was part of CA's Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I love the White Lions thematically as kind of the bodyguards of the Phoenix King, and these guys are just a souped up version of them. They do have an armor sundering, minus 30 armor melee attack, which is great, as well as the Guardian ability, which plus 18% physical resistance if they're hugging Teclis. That's going to be very powerful. And they do have, once again, missile resistance of 30. It's as if they're shielded. Their lion cloaks give them protection against missile damage. And they also brought the Everqueen's Court Guards, the best range unit in the game, bar none, hands down. Fire damage, magic damage, huge armor piercing, 180 range, enormous. They have in the Encouragement aura, as well as, let's see if I can click on this, come on, the Banner of Avalorn. So more magic for Teclis, going to be great. And if these guys get engaged in melee, their stats are huge. 45 melee attack, 63 melee defense. They are armored, 40 armor is not terrible, and good 32 weapon strength. So yeah, just dropping zombies on these guys is never going to be enough. These ladies, I should say, the bodyguards of the Everqueen. So yeah, you have to take these guys. You have to really focus them. You can't just drop zombies on them, because they're going to clear them out and then be back to shooting before you know it. So Teclis gets some free points there, puts him in the lead, and at this point we can finally move into regular speed. hopefully you guys appreciate the longer intros, the breaking down of the different strategies and the units, especially for those of you who aren't that familiar with Total War. I hope you find that valuable. So I am taking some damage from the Grudge Thrower of the Dwarves, and I'm trying to get all my units tucked in together. The Fleur-de-lis, I left them in the back, and I'm going to use the forest as cover to bring them closer to this engagement. I parked the Grail Knights here. I was thinking about just rushing in, getting some free damage, and pulling out. We're going to see if I'm able to do that or not. At this point, the High Elf player is moving forward towards me, and I'm concerned that I've left myself, despite the High Elf player being in the center, I'm concerned that I've kind of given myself 3 fronts to fight on. And I considered bringing more cavalry in this game. I actually had the Knights of the Lion-Hearted chosen in the beginning instead of these 2 Battle Pilgrims, but I felt like I would really want more hard-to-break units in the front line, and that ended up paying off for me quite well. I'm going to take the info off so we can get a better view of the battlefield from my position here. Keeping my Paladin high and tight with the front of the formation. So, sneaky move here from Titus on the High Elves. He's going to try and get what would have been a devastating fiery convocation on my front line. And that's the dangers of leaving your front line very spaghettied, like as I do here. And that's kind of the term for stretching your line very thin and keeping them all tightly packed. Normally I like to stagger them. Certainly once I see something like Teclis on the field, or a Wind of Death from the Von Karstein Manfred here. I get an Awaken of the Wood on one of his skeleton units, and I do a good bit of damage, and that's going to force him to use, not really force him, but he's going to feel inclined to use an Invocation of the Hex, so that's good for me. I mainly cast that not just to do some damage, not just to get a few points, but to proc Life Bloom, to sort of heal up some of the damage that I've been taking on my units as we slowly retreat from the dwarves. Using my lower tier chaff to screen here, at this point I had seen the rangers, and I was more concerned about these gyrocopters trying to come in here and get some sort of bomb on me. So I'm going to dodge them, kind of trying to juke them here with these very slow spearmen. Meanwhile, I'm bringing some of my peasants to bear against them. So the fire damage, these guys have pretty low armor piercing, but they do have a lot of unit models. So they're going to get decent damage, and I'm able to scare them away without letting them drop all of their bombs on me. Another Awaken of the Wood going off. Once again, getting some points, doing some damage, but mostly just proccing Life Bloom on my units here. Getting a little bit of healing. So Lore of Life does not resurrect models in the same way that the Invocation of the Hex will on the Undead. All I'm able to do is heal up these units to their individual units' health cap. And then past that, you know, healing can be wasted if you're healing a unit that has as high of a potential health pool as it could possibly have. So you see here I'm taking up lots of different angles. Not really sure where the battle is going to come from, but I see the Vampire Counts player is wanting to retreat as far away as possible, and they're being harassed by the gyrocopters. So a lack of diversity, I would say, from the Vampire Counts player is causing them a lot of grief right now, and they're going to even use Spirit Leech, which is not a bad choice to try and take down these gyrocopters. So at this point I'm getting harassed by rangers, and since they're retreating, they don't get their shields. So I'm not going to mind shooting into the backs of rangers, and I get an Awaken the Wood there to, once again, Life Bloom, heal up my pilgrims. Teclis is coming in, and you saw he got a Flock of Doom on us earlier on my Grail Knights as well, but Grail Knights are not great targets for Flocks of Doom. I rushed them forward to try and get some kind of charge here on these rangers, and we'll see if I'm able to get that. Take one to go this route and one to go the other. I was hoping he would leave behind his Grudge Thrower and try and protect them here. No Slayers in the front line. Another Flock of Doom here from Teclis, who's danger close to all of these units. The Fireborn are getting a nice charge here, and I can show that to you guys. Actually, no, they're a little bit mismicroed, as well as these Graveguard, but even so, they do have huge charge bonus of 80. So a charge there would have been devastating, so unfortunately for the High Elf player, he is engaging armor-piercing infantry with an anti-large cavalry unit, and he's going to pull them back. Smart move. These miners get a little over-anxious, probably looking to throw their blasting charges into my very vulnerable men-at-arms, but I'm going to engage them in melee before they're able to do that. And because they have no shields, my archers are going to do a number on them, the peasant bowmen with their rates of fire. So he also gets the Swordmasters of Hoeth in here. So the High Elf is kind of choosing to fight on all sides. Quite brave of him. He's using his Pure Main Company to hold down the dwarves while he gets a nice invocation off. And more Flock of Dooms giving him more points. And you see he's pulling ahead in the points. Oh, beautiful comet there. And I got that into some Phoenix Guard. So that's a really high value comet from me. Oh man, the laser beam shootings of the Everqueen's Courtyard from this high ground position. They have just kind of the perfect arc of fire to get that armor piercing off. It looks like they're targeting the Iron Drakes, which is definitely a better choice than trying to shoot at Iron Breakers. You're not going to have a good time if you're doing that. So some Swordmasters, the miners retreat, the Swordmasters kind of get pulled into my front lines, and at this point, I'm not going to be very afraid of engaging. We don't want to sit and look at each other for too long, especially not while everyone else is getting points. So we're going to take this pocket here, take this pocket here. At this point I'm realizing that this flank is secure, and I'll almost certainly be moving my spearmen to help defend against these vampire counts in just a second here, because I'm noticing he's moving his forces forward. He's engaged with the Fireborn, but he's also being harassed to death by these gyrocopters. The FFA Enchantress has a nice little pocket here from which to cast. And we're going to cast Earthbloods. We're going to cast Awaken the Woods. We're just trying to get healing, keep our guys in the fight long enough, and win this war of attrition. I pulled back my Grail Knights and my defenders. I saw Manfred skirting around the edge. I wasn't trying to catch him up here. If he wants to walk around into my back line and expose himself, that's fine with me, and I'm going to send in the Grail Knights. Manfred does have passive regen, but they have magic damage. So they're going to bypass any kind of healing he does. He's going to take huge damage. They're meant to fight large targets. He's not on his steed. That would have been better. And we don't want to clump up too hard here. They're kind of vulnerable to some sort of vortex spell. But you see, finally, I'm bringing the spearmen over to help me hold back the Grave Guard. Fleur-de-lis are getting in there. And I'm realizing I'm not taking a lot of damage from this engagement, so I'm not worried about leaving them in the front lines. I brought a lot of infantry, and they're doing just fine. The men-at-arms, despite routing, that's kind of what they're meant to do. My more elite infantry units, my foot squires, are being held in reserve. The units that I most want to get into the fight, nice zombie summon here preventing me from bringing the spearmen in. Another comet there. I got that on an engagement between the Fireborn and the Grave Guard, so I got a lot of points for that as well. So the Dwarf player has cleared up the High Elf resistance. These Phoenix Guard are getting blasted from the side here, unfortunately for them. But the unit that I most wanted to get into the fight was the Holy Wardens of La Maison Tall. And you'll see here they're intermixed in this frontline fight, and they're going to do great with their fire damage against all of these Grave Guard and their frenzy. So I felt it was very important. I wanted to pull my guys back. They weren't under any threat, but this just kind of bugs my instincts as a Total War player, keeping all of these very high value cavalry circled around this one unit. But I thought it was so important to take out Manfred von Karstein that I left him surrounded. Now, the FFA Enchantress took a lot of damage from the front line by the actual Vampire of Death. So I didn't notice how much damage she was doing to her. Luckily on Silveron she's very fast. She has a speed of 95. So when she routed, she came back, and I knew she would. On foot, the Vampire is not going to be able to catch her. And she'll be able to heal up quite a bit with some nice consolidated Earthbloods. And I want her back in the melee because I want her draining all of these Grave Guard while they fight. So the Dwarf player roasting these Phoenix Guard. The Grudge Thrower is nearly out of ammunition, so they're going to have to kind of engage in melee. They're not going to be able to sit back and rely on 2 units of Rangers to give them the kind of Overwatch fire that they need. Everqueen's Courtyard, managing to fire almost all of their ammunition. They didn't get a ton of kills. I'm not sure what they were firing at, all game, but probably some very sturdy dwarf high value targets. The Fireborn coming in here, slow-mo charge. Oh, and they're going to wreck these Rangers. Let's go fastball and slow-mo. There we go. Oh, that's a grudging. That's a grudging. And they're preemptively jumping and karate kicking. Oh, that's beautiful. These are one of the coolest cavalry units in the game. Quite sweet. Dragon Princes.
At once.
Lots of fire coming in here from my peasants. I'm focusing down Graveguard, the Great Weapon variant. They aren't shielded. Graveguard, the standard variants, do have silver shields, so very high missile resistance. So I don't want to shoot them. That would be a waste. And at some point here, I'm going to get my Paladin onto this Vampire. And I'm being more conservative with the Fey Enchantress here. I don't think she'll take damage from zombies. So I think I pull her out for a second and then realized this was zombies, and then I re-engaged her. And that's kind of the order you saw going off there. I'm like, zombies can't hurt her. I want that aura. And you'll see here the, let's see if we zoom in, get that looking right. Oh, and they start to crumble. Oh. So at this point we had surrounded everyone. The vampire player kind of said GG's and bowed out. The zombies are going to fight to the last. But that was unfortunate because it took away a lot of my potential for points. I had this fight cleaned up nicely. And there were several more thousand points there for me to get. So yeah, it was a bit of a disadvantage for me to not be able to clean up that fight the way I should have been able to. So at this point, I'm hot grouping all my guys. When units rout, they leave your hot groups, and when they come back, you need to be constantly on top of microing that. You need to be putting them back into hot groups, locking them if you think that's necessary, and then reforming ranks. So I'm getting together my front line of men-at-arms and battle pilgrims. I'm reforming my back line of foot squires and wardens, and I'm getting my peasant bowmen back in line. One of them is completely out of ammo. We still have our fire arrows, and it should be, yeah, our pox arrow still has most of its ammunition. Well, not most, but a good chunk of its ammunition left, so that's going to be valuable. And I'm looking to counter skirmish these rangers as they run away. They're not going to be having the benefit of these shields when they're taking fire from the back, and the slowing effect is quite good against already slow units. And I sent this one unit out ahead, and I'm just going to use them to screen. They're useless at this point in melee. Their stats are terrible. They might as well be zombies at this point. So let's let them take any remaining satchel charges from these iron breakers, was my thought. Let them get roasted by the iron drakes. We're going to skirmish and keep our backline as healthy as possible.
Destroy them.
Spearmen here, still in the back line. Gonna probably just throw them in at some point. Our Grail Knights here, I have them in the Lance formation. I think it's fine against the Dwarves. In this formation, they're much better at punching through tightly packed infantry formations. Ooh, a Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin. He still had those left. And he is going to just dumpster this Grail Knight, unfortunately. That's a very powerful on-hit effect. I can't do anything about that. These Norganlings, I had to get into them. They were throwing their satchel charges beautifully into this melee blob. And the Iron Drakes just have a great position here to start taking out my infantry as well. So I'm going to look to get my cab up and around. I think I have the Fleur de Lis in there as well. So they're in the back line taking care of the Rangers and this Grudge Throwers. Fey Enchantress is up in the melee, fighting Iron Breakers, who aren't that good offensively, so I was surprised when she took so much damage. And here comes the Runesmith with a big hammer smackdown on her. She's draining them, she's lowering their melee attack, so good catch from the Dwarf player, seeing that the Fey Enchantress was more vulnerable than I really suspected she was. Looking to return all my routing units there, and down she goes to a Rune Lord. I really wasn't respecting the offensive capabilities of the Iron Breakers and the Rune Lord as much as I should have, because they're such a defensive unit that you think, you know, they really can't hurt you, but they can. And luckily here we're managing to shatter off a lot of these units. The lower tier units are running away, miners. One of the Iron Drakes with only one unit left. Gyrocopter getting in there, Iron Drakes fighting in melee. And we still have our Paladin, so we do have, and this is why I always bring a secondary hero, or nearly always bring a unit with an encouragement aura, because in late game scenarios like this, you really need an anchor. If your Lord dies, gets sniped out. Sniping out Lords is kind of a favorite thing for people to do, especially in the meta. It's not the way I like to play, So I'd rather build an anti-sniping build than a sniping build. And there he is in the pit, getting knocked around. But we're going to get a rear charge here on these iron breakers with the fleur-de-lis.
Quick now!
Unfortunately, the Holy Warden's not going to be very effective in this fight. Once again, for the reasons I've already listed, their magic damage is negated by the resistance of the dwarves. The Iron Drake's getting a few last shots here. Probably going to be routing the Spearmen. They do have super high armor now, 185 armor on these units, thanks to standing near the Rune Lord. So luckily for me, I have enough Grail Knights, and with some poison coming in on Overwatch, we're able to surround the Rune Lord and just start slowly whittling him down, because 180 armor is a lot for these guys to get through. My Grail Knights are undoubtedly providing the bulk of my armor piercing. At this point, I don't think the High Elf player has anything left. I saw them charge in some Dragon Princes earlier. The Fireborn did get in there, but I think that's it for them. So at this point, it's just me and the Dwarf player. And the Dwarf player is in the lead on points, but if I'm able to rout his army, then I'll get a bonus based on the remaining units that I have left. The Norgling Ironbreakers are fighting Grail Knights. That's not a fight you get to see every day. Let's go ahead and take advantage and look at them. You see these chivalrous knights up on their horses poking these heavily armored dwarves down below. I love the lore on the Grail Knights and the lore on the Norglings Ironbreakers, or just the Ironbreakers in general. These guys being kind of the best line of defense in the dark tunnels beneath the Dwarven holds. Very thematic, super heavy armor, the Gromril armor that protects them, and the Grail Knights being these kind of superhuman knights who found the Lady in the Lake, so to speak, kind of Arthurian, and have drank from the Holy Grail, giving them superhero type powers, super strength and durability, which is represented by their physical resistance and their perfect vigor. They never get tired. And here are these Slayers who were fighting some of my chaff units. I was keeping them occupied. I didn't want them getting into my Grail Knights. They would have been very dangerous there. The fight that I wanted them to take was perhaps against the Holy Wardens, or these Battle Pilgrims are going to do quite well. Slayers want to fight large targets, preferably these versions, not the giant Slayer versions. They want to fight low armored large targets, but I gave them Battle Pilgrims who, with their frenzy, they're kind of the perfect counter to Slayers. They're 300 gold cheaper, lots of unit models, and very high leadership. So they're going to stand and fight. And just to help clean them up quicker, I'm going to send in these Spearman units into their back, and that should help. The Rune Lord goes down here. Is this him? Oh, that is him. Oh, poor dude. Decapitated. His beard should be buried with his body. So the Paladin, having him paid off big time, having his huge weapon strength on such a cheap unit. I think stripped down, they're in the 400s. So you get a lot of utility on a 400 gold unit. He didn't get a lot of kills, but he did anchor our front line, let us survive the huge leadership penalty that we no doubt took when the Fey Enchantress died. So what a fun, amazing game. That's everything I want out of a free-for-all whenever I play. Let's go ahead and look at the breakdown. So there was a lot of jockeying for position there. There was a lot of people making use of their specific build strengths. For instance, the High Elf player was using Teclis on his horse to move around quickly around the map against our relatively slower factions, the Dwarves and the Undead, and using his magic to kind of rack up a lot of early points with Flock of Doom and potentially Fiery Invocation. So that was him taking advantage of his strength, as well as the mobility of the Fireborn. And, you know, the Vampire Counts player was attempting to kind of huddle around the Claw of Nagash. Unfortunately for him, the Dwarf player did bring these gyrocopters, and I'm sure that's what killed it. Just heavy focus fire from them. They are much more accurate than the standard version, but more expensive. That somewhat dismantled his build, but his ability to hide in the forest and potentially save himself a lot from the range damage certainly helped him. And he did a ton of damage to the Fey Enchantress with this vampire. And you'll see here she got more kills than Manfred did, which is pretty unusual. The Dwarf player just got a lot of value out of every single unit. Perhaps too eager with the miners, early on cost him quite a bit of value there. They didn't get a chance to really throw their satchel charges. Good value from the grudge thrower. Good value from the gyrocopters. Anytime you can kill a Claw of Nagash, that's an extremely expensive unit. I want to say it's 1,700 gold. And yeah, taking that out with just a couple volleys from these was clutch. Very happy to see the Rune Lord kind of Ironbreaker frontline combo. Very resilient. And the Slayers, they always get their value in my opinion. So good play there. And Captain Titus's, let's see, his front line did great. Swordmasters, you see 167 kills there. And the Pure Main Company, they were thrown in, I think, just to hold up the dwarves at that one point and get more value out of the magic. And that's certainly not a bad strategy. They are kind of expensive to do that with. I think they're 1,100 gold, the standard White Lion unit being just, I think, 800. So these guys are much more expensive. I don't know if I would use them for that purpose, but you know, he had to use what he had to do that. And us just taking advantage of positioning, saving ourselves from being the main focus of the dwarf army, allowing Titus to move in and kind of harass them long enough for us to deal with the undead threat. I think those were kind of our keys to success there, not throwing away our cavalry early in some sort of goofy engagement, and allowing all of these peasants to be the ones taking the brunt of the fighting, while our more elite Holy Wardens and Foot Squires, and our backline even of Fire and Pox arrows, were the ones that were really providing the DPS in conjunction with our cavalry. So these guys weren't meant to do damage, they were meant to die, and that's what they did. And having the secondary hero, as I've already mentioned, prevented us from getting Lord sniped, or just being careless and losing our Lord ourselves. And she did great with her healing, and I got two very solid heavy point giving Chalice of Potions. So I was happy to showcase that for you guys. So guys, if you like this video, and I hope you did, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment if you saw something I missed, or if you like my channel and you want to see more of this, let me know. And if you want to get in on some of these games, my name is Good Talk Gaming, and you can find me on Steam, and we could end up playing some games together and putting them on the channel. Hopefully you're a great player and you can teach me something, and we can have some great games together. So alright guys, without any further ado, my name is Brett, channel is Good Talk Gaming. Boom, there you go, and I will see you in the next one.